Anyway, good morning, welcome, happy Friday. We're live with Zoom in with Seth, David, and friends, and I'm here with a lot of my friends, but most especially I want to welcome our guest for the day, Jessica Mah. Jessica, you know it was almost exactly 2 years ago that you were last on here with us.
What? That's awesome.
Yeah, I was looking it up because I was like, where's the old video from the last time around? And it was
Yeah.
it was February 2 years ago, like late February. So
Well, happy 2 year anniversary.
that's right. And welcome back.
It's too bad we're not doing this in person too, right? Because you're gonna go meet up in Burbank, right?
Yeah, we're going to meet up at the WeWork in Burbank, and obviously those plans fell apart.
Yeah,
So,
that happens. Coronavirus happens.
yeah, it happens.
Yeah.
Well, and there's so much scary stuff in the media. Like I was reading an article this morning that was talking about how, this kind of thing, we may be prone to this kind of thing happening repeatedly in the future.
Exactly.
Which is, I don't know how much to believe, how much not to believe. I try to stay away from the negative and the fear and panic hype that tends
Exactly.
to surround all this stuff, because it's only going to get me into a bad mindset. And as it was this week, I had to reach out to a coach that I have and have her kind of talk me off the ledge, because I was getting discouraged,
Mhm.
and she
Yeah,
turned
no,
me
that's,
around.
that's everything. I mean, I've been thinking about the concept of psychological coronavirus and how so many people have caught psychological coronavirus, right?
Yeah.
In that they're scared, they're living in a place of fear and scarcity mindset and only thinking of the negatives. And then, you put yourself in that place, you're going to manifest that. You're going to it's a self-fulfilling prophecy in many ways. When instead, I mean, if you're thinking about opportunity, how we're going to emerge stronger than ever. And, you don't want to let a good crisis go to waste either, right? And the opportunity to, really change things up or, do things differently. So,
Yep. Yeah, and what this coach had said to me earlier this week, and then I went live in our Facebook group just yesterday with our friend Matthew Fulton to kind of share what she had shared with me that helped me turn my mindset around on all this. Because she said, there are going to be segments of the market that are going to buy into the fear and panic hype, but then there are going to be segments of the market that are going to use this time as a time of growth and reflection. And I said, you know what, that's the side of it that I want to be on. And it's amazing how as soon as I turn that attitude of mine around, it's not that anything probably really changed on the outside, but because my perspective changed, all of a sudden I started seeing, hey, wait a minute, you know what? I did have a couple of projects come in. I do have money flowing in this week. And yes, I've also lost some, but I've gained a lot too. And it's just a matter, and I'm sure, Jessica, you're going to have a lot of amazing insights for us this morning on this subject specifically, but it's a matter of getting creative and learning how to pivot around this and saying, number one, how can I help people? And number two, remembering that your help is valuable and that you deserve to get paid for your help. Yes, we should do a lot of stuff for free and just help people just for the sake of helping people. But at a certain point, you're also entitled to be able to be paid for your expertise and for that knowledge that you have. And I'll say one more thing and I'll shut up and let you talk, Jessica, because our friend Alicia had a really good suggestion that I love. And I included it in the email that I sent out this morning, reminding people about today's Zoom, which was that she and others that she knows are doing, free webinars, but they're putting a virtual tip jar out there so that for those who want to contribute to help and those who can afford to, they can, but otherwise it's there for free for those who just can't afford it but need the help. And she said in some cases she's had webinars that do better than some of the paid courses just based on having the tip jar out there. So
wow, that's really interesting.
mm-hmm. Well, and she's like me. She teaches software. So that's probably what she's putting out there. I haven't seen it firsthand, but I'm guessing she's doing trainings on software and tips, and that's what people are, contributing for, basically at their discretion. And then, of course, I suggested that for those who want to do it and don't really have the infrastructure set up right away for how to get the payments or create the tip jar, go get an account on Patreon, because Patreon has it all set up for you. All you have to do is give them the option of contributing through Patreon, and you can link that up to PayPal or Stripe. And actually, I don't know if they allow PayPal. Either way, you can easily set up a Patreon account, which will allow people to contribute when and if they choose to and can afford to, in exchange for whatever content you're putting out there. So yeah, I thought that was a really cool idea. But Jessica, I want to know. I want to hear from you. What are you doing? You have a company. You guys have software. You have clients, and I know that you're a creative person. So I want your thoughts on what people can do to pivot at a time like this and get creative and stay positive and keep things flowing.
Yeah, I mean, my first thought is it's so important to just surround at least myself with other people who are in this space and just declare, look, I'm a psychological coronavirus free zone, okay? Like, I'm just trying to surround myself with other people like that. And so I've set up these brain trust meetings where, I mean, even today, I'm going to spend an hour with people talking only about the opportunities that are going to emerge due to what's happening with coronavirus. An hour where 7, 8 brilliant people I know are only going to talk about the positives that are going to come out of this. And I think that's incredible. And every day I'm also having a daily sync up. I call it wartime. And this is with all the top people in the PPE movement where they're trying to help find N95 masks. I'm very passionate about this right now. And, we're working to procure many millions of masks. And we have basically our own brain trust. And every day we're just talking, how do we just help the problem? And that's creating this empowering attitude that just spills into all other parts of, my life. So that's kind of the first thing, right? Just surrounding yourself with the right people and setting up the right meetings and discussions to explore these topics.
That's awesome. I love that idea. It's, it reminds me of something that we talk about in AA. I've been sober for coming up on 21 years. And there's an expression we use that says, stick with the winners. And you just reminded me of that. That's who we want to stick with. We want to stick with the people who are not going to sort of try and drag us down with negativity, but who are going to help us and help one another to keep each other up, to keep each other positive, to keep each other flowing with ideas. And so I love the brain trust idea.
Yeah. And just to step back real quick, just a super quick background. I'm Jessica Mah. I'm the founder and CEO of InDinero. We do accounting and taxes for small and medium-sized businesses. Some clients we've served include Pinterest, Slack, Stripe, and DoorDash. And we have almost 300 employees. And we're tech-enabled accounting. So we have actual accountants. We do all the accounting, business accounting, bookkeeping, corporate, state, and city tax filings for our companies. And we also have our own technology and software. And the idea is that we're trying to add leverage. We're trying to make accountants much more productive and take away all the busy work. And I've been doing this for about 10 years now.
That's right.
I have a quick question just for Jess I'm just curious, when you say you have your own technology, you built your own accounting platform that you guys use, like an in-house proprietary platform?
Yeah, we built our own in-house proprietary platform. And then more recently, I decided to kind of shift my focus to have all of our customers be on QuickBooks. And then we would have our own dashboard layer and automation and value creation layer that sits on top of QuickBooks. But at first we were 100% our own proprietary thing until everyone's like, hey, could you just partner with QuickBooks? And that's where we're at now.
And by the way, I'll throw out there, because I know Jessica's humble and might be hesitant to mention this, so I'll mention it, that InDinero is also acquiring CPA firms and bookkeeping firms. So if you or anyone is maybe thinking about, the exit plan, the exit strategy, Jessica's company is definitely one to look at who might be interested in acquiring your firm. So I just wanted to make a point of mentioning that while we're on the subject. So, and some of you may remember from our last interview 2 years ago that Jessica's a very impressive person. I don't want to embarrass you too much, but quite an impressive background. But maybe most what's the right word? Well, the thing at the top of my mind is, Jessica, you're under 30 still, right? Okay, you have a pilot's license. And you're still able to fly. You just probably shouldn't bring other people on your plane with you right now.
Yeah, I have a few quarantine buddies, so
okay.
I'm still mobile, but trying not to, I've been flying around, and I fly around all these private airports here, and there's no one out there.
Right.
It's like the field guys, like you're the only one I've seen in like a day.
Right. We talked about Jessica and I sat down for coffee. I don't know, was it like a month ago already? It seems like it was just a minute ago. And we
Yeah.
were talking about this, and because Jessica at that time, this was before everybody was on lockdown, and Jessica was saying that she's, flying some friends around and things. And I said, maybe you can start an offshoot from InDinero. We can call it InDiere.
Yeah, side gig. I mean, look, like the whole idea is that, I want to have a very full, complete, multidimensional life. And I think that business is really important and a big part of that. And I'm sure everyone here is super focused. I mean, you're all obsessed with personal growth and self-development. That's very clear. And just having these other interests and learning in other areas for me, like, has helped so much. Like, I take what I've learned from how they train pilots and the rigor and regimen there, and applying that to the business world. It's just incredible. And, everyone here, I'm sure, has their own hobbies where that's the case.
Right. And so tell me something else, because I know we talked about this last time, but then I didn't know a whole lot about it. And I feel like I know a little bit more, but probably still just enough to be dangerous. Tell us what Y Combinator is all about.
Yeah, so Y Combinator, it's an accelerator program, and they've funded companies like Airbnb and Dropbox and Stripe, among many others. And they basically helped us get our first money. Like, we knew nobody, we had no money, we had no connections or anything, and our companies had no employees. And they gave us our first $17,000 to get off the ground, and they mentored us. And so one of my first friends, when I did Y Combinator, this is back in 2010, the guy running it said, "Oh, you should meet the Airbnbs." I'm like, "The Airbnb who's?" Like, "Oh yeah, the Airbnbs. Like, just talk to them. They're cool dudes, and they're doing some airbed thing." So I go talk to them, and then Brian Chesky, who's the CEO of Airbnb, as you all know, great company. And back then it was just him in his apartment, and they had like a few desks, right, for employees. They only had like 4 or 5 employees at that point. And, we were just trying to support each other and help each other out. And it's just really cool to reflect back on that, because, we've all grown our companies, his a lot further than mine, but it was just an incredible support community and network.
Right. And this is still available to people. I mean, I've gotten emails from people who at least claim to be sort of reaching out to me on behalf of Y Combinator, offering me opportunities to get my company somehow submitted. Is like, what does that process look like, or how does it work?
I think all these programs are fairly similar in their applications. I mean, I've figured out, I've applied to so many of them and have gotten in a lot of them. And there are a lot of these grant programs too, that they really try to help kids who are out of college who have literally nothing. That's really who they're trying to focus on. And what I found is that a lot of those support communities and networks are really just looking for people who are in it to win it, and who are so determined will do anything to win. Mm-hmm. And that's why I think they brought me in. That's why they like the Airbnbs. They're like, wow, these guys like selling like space on an airbed in an apartment. Like, what a stupid idea, but they're smart. They'll figure something out. They'll pivot along the way, which, they have. And that's really the key.
Yeah. I mean, it's incredible how they completely disrupted the whole hospitality industry, just like Uber did with transportation. And, there's so many other examples of that we can think of. Which makes me wonder, I mean, you, Jess, as somebody who, I think kind of has your finger on the pulse of what's going on in the whole startup world. I mean, you originally built InDinero to help startups, with their accounting, right?
Yeah. And we've seen so many startups and companies along the way. And now that we're going through an unprecedented, economic and health crisis time, it's cool to observe that so many of these companies that had so much, such high hopes and such creative ideas for transforming industries are getting crushed, right? I mean, WeWork's like an easy example, but there's so many others like that run by friends of mine who I don't want to name because I really care about these people. They had bold ideas. They raised billions of dollars. I mean, Sunday morning, I had a guy who raised $2 billion for his company. And he called me and I was still sleeping. And he's like, yeah, this coronavirus thing could ruin my business. And we just talked about that. And this guy, like, he was in it to win it. And it kind of just shows how, a big part of this is about the journey and really giving it your best, and being detached from the outcome is just so critical,
Mm-hmm. And so one thing I know that I've been doing, and I have a program called 97 and Up, which is my sort of group of accountants and bookkeepers. It's our own brain trust, I guess you could say. I've been referring to it as a mastermind, whatever name we give it. The point is, what we've been talking about in the wake of all this is sitting down with our clients and saying, let's look at the numbers. Let's do some cash flow projections. Let's analyze the expected reduction in revenue, if not complete elimination of the revenue. Look at what's in the bank, see what the burn rate is, see where we can cut back. And I started actually teaching in our group just this week how to take a simple cash flow projection and really evolve it into a full-fledged financial model, which I know a lot of startups do in the beginning to get financing based on a whole lot of assumptions. Now we're doing it in some cases based on historical data. But the point being that I'm sitting down with them and saying, let's not live in fear because we don't know what things are actually going to look like. And let's sit down and lay it all out. Let's put the financial yardsticks out there and measure what things can look like. And then we can talk about getting creative about building streams of revenue. I'm wondering, A, if you're doing anything like that with clients, and B, what other ideas you have for how to sit down with clients and give them peace of mind about how to navigate these waters. You're muted.
Yeah, we've actually done a lot of training with our team on how to advise their clients, and we've actually prepared a whole worksheet for them to run through. So it's very templatized, repeatable process, and it's a really collaborative approach. And it kind of runs through everything you just mentioned. Mm-hmm. But on top of that, again, as we go back to the beginning of our conversation, how could we focus on opportunity? How could we focus on how we could pivot into a good direction? What if coronavirus and lockdown is not just 3 months? What if it's 3 years? What if it's forever? How would that change your business? Those are really important questions to ask clients, I think, right now. Even if, it's not going to be 3 years, it just, that creative thinking is what I think clients need to get into the right mind space. Also, we're thinking about the SBA loans, right? And there's a lot of documentation out there now on applying for that and how we could prepare our clients for that and help them get into a better place. This is really a unique opportunity for us to step up and create more value for our clients than ever before. And I think in that sense, we're like the frontline doctors and nurses, but in a business context. Mm-hmm. That's really cool. That's really inspiring for people. And if we have employees, we could use that to inspire our employees as well.
Right. So that's the main thing. And then I'm curious, obviously I'm not going to ask you to share any secrets that are secret, but between the ideas you've discussed with your team and within your brain trust, any creative ideas you can share with us about what people can be doing or what they should be thinking about?
I mean, a lot of it's pretty, I don't want to say obvious because it's not necessarily obvious, but I mean, for a lot of the brick and mortar companies, right? It's like, how do you create a more virtual experience? Like, you're looking at these fancy high-end restaurants and how they're creating that high-end experience for couples to have their own makeshift private romantic date on a Friday night experience, right? Like, how creative is that? Other fine dining restaurants are just shutting down altogether, and these guys are thriving. Another company I know of, the CEO runs a personal fitness training company where normally they have actual in-life personal trainers, and now they're doing all of that with pre-recorded videos, live videos, bringing it all online and making it like a recurring daily thing. Like, people are actually more likely to work out more often from home if they don't have to wake up and go to the gym, right? And it's like some of these companies are doing better now than they were before, which is kind of the mind-boggling part.
Right, and they'll probably stick with those models well beyond, when hopefully this does all blow over, which is brilliant. But that's why I love to hear examples like these, because I can think about that and think about different versions of that for companies in all kinds of industries. How do we take what we were once doing in in physical presence with people and turn it into a virtual I love the the sort of dining idea. What I'm wondering about that, because I'm sure you've thought about it, is I'm sure some people are still afraid. I know some people, even though we're all being encouraged to order takeout from restaurants and have it delivered, but you can't be sure that somebody there isn't just asymptomatic and also delivering coronavirus to your home. So what are these restaurants doing to prevent, if not eliminate, the chances of that happening? I mean, obviously they've got to be disinfecting and whatever, but any other insights besides the obvious on that?
I mean, they're that the bigger thing actually is around communication, optics, and marketing, right? And having clients share best practices with each other and create guidebooks industry by industry on and creating these brain trusts on behalf of our clients, introducing them to each other. That's kind of the next level here, because there's only so much we can do for them, and then we got to kind of set them up for success on their own.
Right. Right, but so the real name of the game is take any business that you're working with and think in terms of how do we convert them into a virtual business. I was a little surprised the other day. A guy that I know, and I don't know him real well, but he was sharing with me in a group that I was sitting in that he works for an IT company, and his IT company wanted him to deliver equipment to the homes of some of their employees to install stuff, servers, I guess, whatever they thought they needed. And of course, he had an issue with this and raised it with his employer, like, hey, I'm not sure it's such a good idea for me to be going into people's homes under these circumstances. And my thought, and I didn't say this to him because I didn't know him well enough to be this honest with him, but my thought was, as an IT company, shouldn't you have the technology and know-how to not have to do something like that? Like, everything can easily be transferred to the cloud and accessed remotely. All any employee should need is a computer and an internet connection, right?
That would be part of the service, right? If people don't know how to set up the computer and we've all got that family member that just can't do that, right? But
even then, first of all, this was employee to employee, not to their customers, number one. Number two, even if we're to the customers, I've done things where I've used something simple like join.me because it's easy to get somebody in there to then get them into something more complex where I can really take over and set them up remotely. I don't see why you should ever have to physically go in person to do that kind of setup unless they don't know how to turn their computer on in the first place, which even then I could take a picture of the power button and send it to them through my mobile.
I mean, look, there are companies like Electric.ai, which is started by a former InDinero team member. He was one of my first sales guys, and now he has a 150 employee virtually delivered IT services company where it's IT services all virtual on the cloud. They don't go in person. And that example makes me think about how people who have to pivot their businesses too much to be virtual are a little behind the game. Like, yeah, there's opportunity here. Yeah, you could pivot, but it's also a kick in the butt, and I think, frankly, a catalyst for self-reflection to figure out, well, this is kind of what we could have done earlier too, and how do we get ahead of this going forward?
Yeah, I mean, again, even using the very product we're using now, Zoom, it's very easy to get somebody in Zoom. One of the reasons I switched to Zoom years ago was because for my non-tech savvy people, I found they had an easy time of getting into a Zoom meeting with me and an easy time of responding to my request to remotely control their computer so I could provide exactly that kind of support.
I know, it's brilliant, right?
Yeah, I mean, even like you mentioned, the people who have, any kind of a fitness related business, very, very simple and obvious to me. Do them in Zoom, live stream a class. People can do it from their homes very easily.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be a huge investment. I think that's the other thing that kind of chipped at people before coronavirus. Before it's like, oh, it's going to be such a laborious change. And now it's like, yeah, actually, it's not that hard. It's not that big of a deal.
And it probably costs a fraction of what it's costing you now with the non-remote infrastructure.
Exactly, right?
You can throw away a lot of hardware. Right. I mean, I know I'm preaching to the choir here, but I've turned so many companies over to G Suite, for example, to get them off of an Exchange server and to free them up of physical servers that they had in their offices and put everything in G Suite Google Drive. And one of my attorney clients who I did this for a few years ago, and he was very resistant because he's very old school, doesn't like change, sort of a classic attorney mindset, frankly, in my experience. And so he reached out to me last week, and he's like, I can't go to my office. I don't understand. I'm going to get shut down. He's like, I think my business is essential because it's essential for me to make a living. He was very like, he was angry, obviously, about all this. And I said to him, I said, you know what? I said, 3 years ago or so, I set you up with G Suite. You can do everything you need to do from your home, because he's a PI attorney. His job mostly, other than when he does have to go to court, which is actually rare, because most of what he does is write up case documents and get on the phone and negotiate settlements with insurance companies, right? You can do all of that from your house. There's no reason you can't fully function a law practice like that from your home. The only thing you can't do is actually go to court.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's really cool. I totally agree.
Yep. So, all right. Anybody else here have any thoughts, questions, things you're wondering? Maybe you can generically share an example of a client of yours, and we can brainstorm how we might help that client work in this virtual environment. And like Jessica pointed out, let's pretend for a minute, for better or worse, that it's going to be this way for a long time to come. How are we going to do it?
I have a comment.
Mm-hmm.
I've been virtual for probably about 10 years now. I used to have an office, but I found that all I was doing was scanning in documents and then chit-chatting with the clients, and then I wouldn't see them after that because everything else was online. And I gave up my office about 5 years ago, and I've got maybe 3 or 4 clients I'll meet in person, and they're actually older than I am, so I make allowances for that. But I've got maybe a third of my clients I've never seen face-to-face. It's strictly over the internet. In fact, I had one client who was in Shanghai, China for 10 years, and we did it over the internet. And I see it as an advantage because I don't have to worry about people that are sick coming in my office.
Mm-hmm.
And I meet them. I do Zoom meetings if they want to meet me face to face, and I record and upload it to Dropbox. So there's an advantage there. So I see it as a big advantage if you look at the right way. It's people that are sort of got their feet in cement on, especially accountants, having people come to their office and they do the taxes for them while they're there. I would think this would be very dangerous to H&R Block, where they rely on people coming, funneling through their office and doing it on site. So I see it as an advantage. Plus, I don't have to travel in Seattle traffic.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure if H&R Block is smart, they've already got everybody set up on Zoom. I mean, it's just such an obvious thing to do. Before any of this, I was doing the same thing I'm doing now. I'm in Zoom meetings all day long with people. When I'm not recording videos for my next online, video campaign, I'm in Zoom with somebody almost all day long, back to back, with maybe 15 minutes to half an hour in between, so I can get a break here and there. But my life has been Zoom. Zoom has been my office for a very long time now.
I had a thought maybe the other day. One of a CPA of one of my clients, he called me month and a half ago, and said, "Hey, I have a client, their bookkeeper is moving on. There's not really any back story. It's just they decided that, they were going to part ways. Would you be interested in this client? They're in LA. I live in Ojai typically." And he said, I asked what the setup was, and he said, "Well, I think the person is there once a week." And I said, "Well, I'm going to be straight up honest. I only work on QuickBooks Online, and I work remotely because I travel a lot, and it's totally doable, and I can always meet them, just to get set up. But that's the way that's the way I operate. I just want to be upfront with that." But I said, I don't really see any issues with it. And he said, "All right, I'll pass that information on." And he was going to have the person contact me or make an introduction depending on what she wanted to do. And I didn't hear back. This coronavirus thing came about, and I'm thinking, I think I'm going to reach back out to him, and, they might actually be more willing to go down that route now. Like, that all of a sudden doesn't look like a crazy thing. There are just so many people in the community that I live in that they have their bookkeeper come in once a week, and they do the books that week. And I want to present to them a whole different model. And so I'm really thinking this is going to give me the opportunity to open that dialogue up with them where they might not have been really open to it in the past. So I'm just sharing that as just an opportunity in general for moving people more onto the cloud and remote working.
Thanks. Good share.
Yep.
I mean, I think that all of this just kind of highlights for the folks who are already virtual or mostly virtual, this is like one of the best opportunities for us. Like, this is, I I don't mean any disrespect to the people who are actually suffering or who have been laid off due to coronavirus. It's had a major negative effect on many people. With that said, it's also possibly one of the best things from a business perspective for, the companies that are able to be, virtual. And I think, to your point, when a client's saying, oh yeah, I'm thinking about, virtual potentially, but I'm used to in person. And we get a lot of those calls a lot at InDinero. And what we have our sales team and other people doing is to lean into that and say, actually, this is the way to do it. This is the best practice, better way to do things. And here's why. So playing offense versus being like, oh yeah, like we could do, this is how we prefer to do things. Like we're unapologetic and this is the best way to do things. And that also pushes people to change their behavior. That was more of a problem before coronavirus. Now it's probably very easy. So yeah, you should definitely call them again. And that's a cool example.
So
yeah, and I want to go ahead.
Sorry. So if we were to extend that a little bit further, right, for those of us which have already gone remote that feel comfortable in that, what's, with all respect of everything that's going on as well, what's that next opportunity, right? So yes, there's a whole bunch of people that have had this opportunity to now expand or grow into this virtual environment. If we're already there, what should we be looking towards next? What's the next opportunity for us to continue to grow and help people and secure our own businesses?
It seemed like you could consult with people in the industry to get them to, like accounting, for example, getting them to transition to an online presence. Sometimes, you get frozen in ice, and it's only when the ice breaks that you have an opportunity for, like say the old paradigm shift, where I think a lot of companies now are going to find that, hey, this wasn't so bad, and there's a lot of potential cost savings in doing this. And so people may not be going back to the office as, once this is over, or not as many people might not be going back, especially people that do, intellectual work or work that is more abstract as opposed to interacting with face-to-face, at least with that kind of a workforce. I think that there's going to be an opportunity to, change the way things are done.
I have had an idea, Matthew, which is pretty obvious, but it's, expanding the service offering, maybe starting to offer more HR services. Like basically what you're doing is you're becoming beyond not just the accounting or bookkeeping service, you become sort of their outsourced HR. And because there's so much tie into what's going on, I see, particularly with all this stuff going on with all the payroll changes, just highlights how integrated or how important it is to have like a broad offering in that area, and at least integrated. So would it, be a little bit of a risk, but basically look and identify certain, and, Seth keeps trying to get all of us to move into becoming more of trusted advisors, and offering financial modeling and all of that. So you could really open it up to be more like HR, CFO services than just like bookkeeping and accounting, which means you might have to bring on new staff that have that skill set if you don't have ramp up time to learn it yourself. So anyway, that's just an idea that came to mind right now.
All good thoughts. Another thing we're thinking about, in addition to what I shared earlier about helping the companies with SBA loans and helping them brainstorm how do they pivot and get into the right mind space, and creating community and the mastermind groups for your clients. We're also working on helping larger companies downsize their finance departments. And that's very relevant right now. Unfortunately, there are a lot of cuts being made to some of these companies, and that's an opportunity for us to really help add a lot of value there.
And I want to speak to a point that Jess and Matthew both made, just sort of making sure that we're being sensitive to the people who are very adversely affected right now. Talking about staying on the positive side of things doesn't necessarily mean ignoring the fact that people haven't experienced, devastating consequences. What it means is that, this is something I've learned deeply over the years in my personal life in other contexts, but it definitely fits here, is that when something traumatic happens to me, I absolutely can and should recognize that it's happened, that something horrible has happened. But the big question mark then is, what am I going to do next? I have two choices, two routes I can go at that moment. I can wallow in it, or I can say, what can I do? Right? And that I think defines at the core the two ultimate routes I can go from that place. Again, I can either wallow in it and stay stuck there, or I can say, okay, what can I do? At the beginning of all this, somebody that I grew up across the street from, who I'm not sure 100%, but I think she works in the restaurant industry, and she was one of the first people to lose her job. And she posted very honestly saying, I live check to check. I now have lost all of my income. I don't know how I'm going to even pay for food, and I have a kid. And it's horrible. It's a horrible thing, and I can imagine I can only imagine how scary that must be for somebody in that position. And I immediately said to her, I said, look, I don't know personally what your actual skills are, but the first thing that comes to mind is think in terms of what skills you have maybe around and on a computer. You're obviously on Facebook, so you have a computer and an internet connection, and you probably have some skills other than whatever it is that you normally have done. And I said, go on to Upwork, set up a profile, and start offering whatever services you can for 15, 20, 30 bucks an hour, whatever it is. Just do something to get some momentum going, to get something going. And while you're at it, jump onto YouTube. There's a million free videos that you can watch to learn new skills. You can learn Excel. You can learn QuickBooks. You can learn any number of things absolutely for free by watching videos on YouTube. So you can literally go out there and intentionally acquire the skills that you need and offer services on Upwork, because there's probably people out there who need it. There are segments, as I mentioned in the beginning of the hour, of people who have a lot of money and who want to spend it because they want help. They want to make sure they can protect their investments, and we are in the best position to help them do that because we have the financial skills that they need in order to be able to do that. So I really hope that puts things into the right context in the big scheme of things. We're not here to deprecate the awfulness of the situation for some people. We're here to help them turn that around and turn the negatives into positives so that we can be productive at a time like this. And ultimately, two things. A lot of people where I come from in the world of recovery are asking, how do I get my self-esteem back? People literally coming off the streets from years of drug and alcohol abuse. That's their first question. I have no self-esteem. How do I get it back? And the generic, really frankly unhelpful answer is, well, you just do esteemable acts. Great. What the F does that actually mean, right? And the answer is you look for and find ways to increase your usefulness to others, right? And that's the answer. And when you can translate that into more specifics based on who you are, what you do, and who you can do it for, then you can start to see, or you can go acquire the skills based on things that you'd like to do, and then go offer your help to other people and then get paid for it. And there's nothing wrong. There's no reason to feel guilty about getting paid for helping others based on skills that you've acquired, right? So I really hope that drives some important points home. And I'll make one more point on this because Larry is live on Facebook and he commented, he says, because I posted the article this morning from Gene Marks about how Amazon is now not accepting any freight in from sellers other than for quote unquote essential items that are needed. So Larry says, so since Amazon is not accepting new shipments into their warehouse to ship out, other than the essentials, he says, do I think manufacturers should begin selling online and ship to customers themselves? And my immediate answer, and I want to know what you all think, was, and I wrote this already, I said, I think so. I said, I think everybody should be doing everything they can to figure out how to stay in business, selling with one main idea in mind: how can I increase my usefulness to others? If we live by that during this, I think the only way we can come out of it is ahead.
Along with what you said, which I love, if you think about it, it always takes some people trying to push forward, trying to invoke that change to pull us out of something like this, to pull us out of a harder time, right? So I really, really appreciate what you just said, Seth, because it is in alignment that just because we may be looking to figure out what's that next move doesn't mean we're looking to leave anybody behind. Just means we're trying to figure out what's the next move to get this thing move in the right direction. So thank you very much for what you said.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome.
Now, I hate sales tax. So all those people are going to have to sell online. How are they going to deal with that part, though? I mean, they don't have to pay it right away, but
Avalara or TaxJar or LumaTax. There's any number of tools out there. I refuse to do sales tax. Anybody need sales tax done? I tell them if I do it, it's going to be wrong. If you want it done right. I honestly tell them that if I do it, I'm going to get it wrong. And if you get audited, you're going to probably owe more money to the state. That's how I get out of doing sales tax. It's not my forte. And really, it's just because I have no desire to do it. It's the most uninteresting work an accountant can do, in my opinion. That and calculating payroll and doing payroll processing are equally boring to me. Never, ever want to. I don't mind booking it. That's easy, but I don't want to calculate it and process it. And
I just think it's so important to really focus on how do we do only work we really love to do, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there's this great book that my friend Curtis Estes wrote, Your Life by Design. I'm gonna post it on the Zoom here, but it's Your Life by Design by Curtis R. Estes, E-S-T-E-S. And it's got like all these questions about like, how do you design the perfect optimal life for yourself? And I've actually gone through this twice now, and I'm going to do it again because the last time I did it was over a year ago. And he asked you basically what would your perfect life look like, but in like 10 different ways. Like, okay, what is the best way for you to imagine your weekend day and your weekday day and your work life and your personal life? And I don't know, just the way he does it's incredible. And then it just automatically starts happening, you know, when you write it down.
I love that. And actually, you just reminded me of something that now I want to share with people. But you said something to me, Jessica, when we met for coffee recently that hasn't left my mind. I've thought about it literally every day since we sat down. It was a question you posed to me. Do you know what I'm talking about?
No, remind me.
As we were talking, you asked me to consider something. And like I said, I'm still thinking, I'm still considering it because the answer is not going to be obvious right away. But I want to preface this before I spill it. Everyone pay attention, take notes, write this down if you need to. It might be one of the most wise things I've learned from Jessica to date, which is as follows. Consider this. In your life, and this is every area, not just business, but everything. And it goes along with, I think, what this book is. Maybe you're going to tell me that's where it comes from, but ask yourself these two questions. What do you want more of, and what do you want less of in your life? I have been thinking about that every single day, practically all day long.
That's awesome. And what have you concluded?
I don't know yet. I'm still pondering it. I mean, certain things definitely came to mind, right? Certain things definitely came to mind, especially and frankly on the negative side, things I want less of in my life, right? And frankly, it came down in some cases to people that I wanted less of in my life, you know, people that maybe I've known for years that, you know, when I've reached out to them, I get no response, right? And yet when they need something, they're very quick to reach out to me and ask. And so I honestly went through and did a little bit of a culling on Facebook behind that, you know, and I'm not one of these people that announces it publicly because that's all for attention. I just kind of went in and I said, yeah, you know what, this person, I reached out to them recently, very sincerely and from the heart, as anybody who knows me will say. I'm pretty sure that that's the only place I ever come from. And just didn't get the courtesy of even a response, not even, hey, I'm really busy, I'll get back to you soon. Nothing, you know, and it only takes a second to do that. So that was one thing that definitely came out of it is thinking about, you know, things and people, places, and things that I want less of, you know, for sure. Some things definitely came to mind right away. And just the awareness of it helps you. What do I want more of? Another thing you said to me that day, which was extremely flattering for me to hear, especially coming from you, Jess, was that you said that you considered me one of the wealthiest people you knew. And it wasn't.
I still believe that. I was going to bring that up if you didn't, actually.
I was so flattered by that, and I knew exactly what you meant, but clarify it for everyone else while I pull something up that I want to share with everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I just feel Seth's vibe and his joy and happiness and his ability to do what he wants when he wants, that freedom, and you know, his close relationships and his ability to create impact, all of this combined creates this extremely, like, in my mind, and I mean, that's like the perfect life, to be honest.
See, I just need to remember to see it that way more often myself. But
I want
so
what
much.
you have. Like, I have 300 employees I have to stress about. Like, I have some stuff that's on the, what am I, you know, less happy about, and what stresses me out. That's, you know, another sub question. And it's been getting me thinking a lot too. And seeing people like you who have like the most wealth, I've witnessed, that is helping me bring myself in that direction. So that's why I enjoy hanging out with you.
Right. Well, let me know anytime when this is all over and we can actually get together in person again. I would absolutely love to. I want to share something that, Jessica, you also triggered this, and it's funny how things line up because this literally just came up like yesterday. A lot of people know I love this product called The Brain. It's like a mind mapping tool, but it's much, much more than that. It's a way to, the way we often categorize things in our lives and especially in our business is often very linear, right? I have folders and subfolders and then documents in those folders, right? But the way the brain lets you organize things, and you can even include documents in the mix, is it lets you cross-link things from all different places so that you can really organize everything in your life in ways that actually are much more in line with how our brains tend to work. Hence the name of the product, The Brain. It's one of my favorite products in the world. And I was watching a webinar that they were sharing just yesterday. I was watching the replay. Yes, I too go watch webinars and learn from others. I'm not always teaching. And I love what they shared, and I think it was I always get his name wrong. Is it David Allen, Getting Things Done? So
Yeah.
apparently this comes from something he teaches. And I just outlined this here in The Brain yesterday while I was watching the webinar, and this is what they lay out. And Jessica, this is what I think you were just talking about a few minutes ago in some ways. It starts at the very top with what are my horizons of focus, right? From the biggest, highest level bird's eye view. And then they explain the first level is the runway. The runway is the things I need to do today, the tasks that I need to do. I need to pick my kid up from school. I need whatever it is, right? Then you have 10,000 foot view, which is current projects I'm working on, right? Really easy to see what this looks like in the business context. 20,000 feet refers to areas of responsibility, bigger picture. I'm a parent, I'm caring for, or I'm a child caring for a parent, or, again, we're getting bigger and bigger in terms of the view. 30,000 feet, what are my 1 to 2 year goals, right? Where do I want to see myself in 2 years? Maybe I want to see myself running a remote business, making $1 million a month. I don't know. I'm throwing numbers out there. I always like to think big, right? 40,000 feet, what's the 3 to 5 year vision that I have? And then 50,000 feet, what are my life goals? What do things look like by the time I'm retired, and maybe even beyond that, by the time I'm nearing my golden age, whatever you want to call that, right? And so I've laid this out, and now Jessica, I'm going back to what you asked me. This is how I combine experiences into my growth, is in each of these areas, I'm going to ask myself, what do I want more of, and what do I want less of, right? At every level.
Love it. And it's an ongoing journey too, right? It's like, perhaps you're always a little bit away from perfection, and that's actually the beauty of the exercise.
Yeah. It's brilliant. All right. Anyone else? We're running near the end of our hour. You have an incredible resource here to tap into and ask questions.
Yeah, and I'll give you guys my email address too, so you could.
That's kind.
It's Gary Tasser.
Hey, Gary.
We have to. We are not just accountants. We are advisors and consultants, and basically they're friends. And what we need these days is just to give them comfort. And off late, in the last 1 week, I've been just working on the COVID loans and helping them with all these things. And that helps keep the relationship, and not only accounting, but overall from the business perspective, their processes, profit. 9 months, I've been just focusing on cash flow, and all this has come to a big, even in my life, I'm realizing what are we focusing on? So same thing, just help them and just get through this.
I love that. It reminds me of a phrase that I've used a lot in the last year or so in our 97 and up group, which is that our main job with our clients is to do one basic thing, which is make them feel safe. And now more than ever, that's paramount.
One thing that came to mind is kind of surfing on a wave that Jess got started earlier posting the book is the book link, and I was just pausing and kind of reflecting on, your life design step by step. And what I thought might be also helpful along to what Gary's saying and Seth has been saying is give our clients permission to pause, because when you're in this, like, you have like all of this stress and you have employees you're trying to keep on and you're trying to feed your family, our initial instinct is just to keep doing, because if we stop doing, oh my God, what's going to happen? But we really can benefit from reflecting, on something like, how do I, and in a way what it does is it moves us out of the emotional response and into more of like the reason and logic, where we can step into what Seth was saying, like step into an action. And so that way you have time to reflect on what are steps I can take that aren't emotionally driven. They're based on some reason and logic. And when you have that confidence as the business owner, then you can kind of impart that to everyone around you. And so I just wanted to thank Jess for kind of teeing that up, because I think that is so important right now for us to be able to bring that kind of foundation and permission, give that permission to the people that we are working with.
That couldn't be said any better. Crushed it.
Yep. And I guess maybe a good note to end on would be this. And of course, Jess, I want to pose this to you. Is, like I mentioned earlier, I have a coach that I'm working with who helped me get turned around when I was feeling discouraged. And I can't help somebody who doesn't want to be helped. Let's preface this with that. But if somebody does come to me as I went to this coach wanting help, saying, hey, you know what, I'm feeling discouraged, I'm feeling scared, help me turn this around. Jessica, let's say one of your good friends came to you with that sentiment. What's your answer to them? How do you help them?
I get these calls every day.
I know.
Multiple times a day.
Mm-hmm.
And it's actually very similar and consistent with what I've shared here, which is, I had a friend I was talking to who basically had to lay off all of their employees last week. All of them. And we talked about, what's the silver lining in all of this? Like, what is the positive stuff here? And, and I just said, I'm super excited for you. And I'm so proud of you, because you built a business, you created all this value. And you think about businesses from like, oh, it's only successful if you sold it for $1 gajillion, right? You look at the terminal value, but actually you should look at the integral value. Like, what was the space in between? Because within this 10-year period, you did feed like hundreds of people. You helped, these vendors pay for their bills for 10 years. And, you made all these friends. And she started to think about that. And it was like, wow, like that totally changed the perspective. And so let's stop valuing companies by terminal value. Let's look at, everything.
Yep. I love that.
Jess, Tanya Schulte, thank you so much for saying that, because that's something I've been struggling with. So, that just brought all of this to a really good point. I love it. Thank you so much.
Amazing.
Hey, I'm so glad.
Yep. No, that's why I wanted to ask that question, especially right here at the end. And if I can, I just want to add one thing to that, which is that, yes, you built all this value and you created something incredible and you fed hundreds of people. And you know what? Since you did it once, you can do it again. It's just going to look a little different this time.
I love that. Love it.
All right. I think that's a perfect note to end on, Jessica. I know you have a lot going on and a lot to do. I want to be respectful of that. Everybody else, as I said yesterday in our Facebook group, we're going to do at least a short, like 15 to 20 minute Facebook Live in the Accounting Business Academy group. Every morning, just look for it somewhere between 9 to 9:30 in the morning. We'll check in. We'll help each other. We'll do kind of what we've done here, but we'll just do it a little shorter just to help everybody kind of stay positive, stay up, and get creative in terms of how we can help. Matthew, you were talking about or your question, people were talking about using what we know to help others in the industry, but you can also help our clients in the exact same way. And I like what you said, Jessica, about, or maybe it was, I forget, maybe it was somebody else who said about giving clients permission to put it on pause. I think a good thing to do there was when they call and say, we need to put it on pause, let them do it. Don't give them a hard time, of course. Wait like a week and then reach out to them and say, by the way, I have some ideas for how I can help you. Don't ask for any money. Suggest that you can do the cash flow projection or that you can do whatever kind of analysis they might need. And then let them decide if they want to do it, and let them pay you voluntarily for it if they can afford to, if they think they can afford to. Just work with people, help them out, and help others to help others, and so on and so forth. Jessica, thank you so much for taking the time to be with me. I'm so grateful.
I'm grateful for you, and I look forward to us hanging out in person. If not, we'll do a virtual Zoom beer or something on a
Definitely.
Friday.
Definitely. All right, everybody. Have an absolutely fantastic day.
Bye, guys.